right. So I just spent an hour of my life um, watching Lewis's video response to my industry pep talk, and it made me think of a few things. I even had to sit there and take notes because it was an hour and 10 minutes long. But while I was watching it here at the shop, I was doing a few repairs, and it was fun and just opening up the incoming mail-ins for today. And I came across this one that I thought would be fun to kind of do on video and kind of tell you my response to what he said. And I guess first, Lewis is a really fun person and a great friend. So I don't want to. I don't want to say anything that is, extremely negative towards him, but a lot of times we tend to have different viewpoints because we come from really different places. So in the video, what I really sort of noticed is that, his passion and what he does is technology. Even though we both fix motherboards, my passion and what I do is repair and not technology. I don't really like technology. It's funny, it makes me think about when it was time for me to upgrade my personal phone. This was, before I really did repair. And I was eligible to upgrade to the all new iPhone 5. And I went down there and said, well, I don't want an iPhone 5. I want to get another iPhone 4S because I don't want to have to change my charging cords. I don't see any advantage to the iPhone 5. And I remember that my husband was blown away that I wasted an upgrade getting an iPhone 4S when I could get an iPhone 5. Even to this day, my personal phone is on, I don't know, iOS 8 something, I think, yes, iOS 8. 8.4 right now because why should I go through the hassle to upgrade? That just sounds like a pain. So I'm not a fan of technology. I think it's okay. I'd rather garden. I think it'd be more fun to go camping than read a technology blog and that sort of thing. But what I do like is repair, and I really started thinking about kind of motivations and field choice. And I do believe that being passionate about what you do is really important, whatever that may be. So for me, everyone knows that I spent a lot of years learning a heck of a lot of molecular biology, specifically cancer genetics. I know a ton about how mutations in genes affect proteins and the way they interact with each other inside a cell. Well, I realized in thinking about this today that the reason that I was drawn to molecular biology and DNA was for repair. I remember writing on my application to grad school that I really wasn't into for the sake of understanding kind of research. I didn't really love my basic science research project on the, what was it? It was something to do with the morphogenetic furrow in the Drosophila melanogaster, embryogenesis and development of the eyeball. And that was great, and I spent a long time mutating genes in fruit flies and looking down a microscope at fruit fly eyeballs all summer, one summer when I was in undergrad. But when I went to grad school, I was looking for a PhD program that would let me really try to solve human disease. I wanted to change and fix things. It was repair. It was about repair. It was trying to understand human disease for the sake of coming up with cures. And that was repair. That was repair. It was repair of people. And I left that field. I still dearly love DNA and biology, but I left that field, and now I work in repair of what happens to be cell phones, but it could be anything else. I would be just as happy repairing lawnmowers or dishwashers or anything else, because I really, really like repair. So So when I sort of say, hey, Louis has lost his motivation or his passion, I'm kind of, thinking about his passion for repair, But yeah, I get that he was never sort of passionate about repair. He's passionate about technology, and the piece of technology that he's working in right now is repair. So I think that kind of thinking like that made a lot of sense to me. However, I think that not everyone goes into cell phone repair because they're passionate about technology. I think that there's a lot of other people like me that your passion and motivation comes from being able to take something broken and fix it. That's the thing to be passionate about. So that's sort of the why do it. And I hope on my channel to sort of showcase ways to be successful at that, because everybody needs to make at least some money in order to live. I'm not super motivated to make, millions and billions of dollars. If you're motivated specifically to be a business person, then maybe repair isn't the right business either. There are probably other businesses that you could go into that would be more lucrative than repair. However, I think you can make a ton of money in repair, and I see this sort of going on for a long time. I can see, Louis is, talks a lot in his responses about trends and seeing trends in the industry, and he makes the point, again and again that, that no one debates. Yes, devices are more difficult to repair than they were, and yes, the price of the devices new has certainly come down, and so therefore you could make an argument that people will eventually no longer see the motivation to get something fixed when they could just replace it. And that may be true. That certainly is going to be true for some amount of people. And when you add in the variable that there's now increased support from the manufacturers, then I can see that, I can certainly see that trend. However, I don't think that you can really say, or at least I don't agree with the idea that if you had a situation where it was always less expensive to just replace the device and get a new one, that people would no longer want to repair. And that's because it comes from who I am and my passion, and I think that there are others like me, and that is the joy of taking something broken and getting it fixed, even if you're not fixing it yourself. But sort of that people are also motivated by the idea of, hating the disposable culture that we've sort of turned into. Nobody likes that. Nobody wants to buy cheap crap and then just throw it away. It feels good to be able to take something broken and get it working again and to continue to use it. And a lot of people don't like change, and they don't like things that are new. I don't, so instead it feels good to be able to kind of get back the old trusty thing and to have it working. I fixed in the last couple of months an iPhone 4S for a guy. He had it all tweaked out, and he liked his custom case and his color conversion, and it was jailbroken with all his tweaks. And he paid $200 to have it repaired and get it all working, fantastic. He was thrilled to get it back. He'd shorted it out using one of those light mods, and we were able to fix it for him. And so I think that repair is sustainable even in the face of these industry facts about, decreasing device prices, because people like repair. It's trendy, it's environmentally sound. People don't like the idea of all of these new phones are raping the earth to dig up these metals, and that comes at a cost of, resources and human lives somewhere in the world. People don't like the conditions that are in China, that are for the people that are kind of enslaved in creating these devices to be so cheap for us to buy new. People don't like that, and so I think that repair is part of an overall sort of feeling that you're selling someone not just the nuts and bolts of, should I just get a new one? But I really believe that people just like repair, and I believe there's enough of those people to support one really great repair shop in every town. I believe that. If you really want to look at trends, you can kind of, look back even further. So let's go back, to, like 50 years ago. And let's talk about what repair looked like then. And repair was a lot more active then than it is now. And it sort of kind of seems to me like it's gone like this, where there's been sort of a die-off of the guys that really knew how to fix everything. And then now there's been sort of a rebirth as we have culturally decided that we don't really like to just constantly be throwing cheap, broken crap away all the time. And so if you go back in time and you ask those guys, hey, what do you think the future of repair is? They're going to say, well, everything's getting too small. You can't fix these there's like surface mounted components. You can't fix those, so the whole motherboard has to be replaced, and what we've learned is that that's not true, because the technology for repair really increases over time as well. So what may have once been unrepairable, or it didn't make sense to repair, now has become repairable. One of the comments that Louis made in his video is like, do you really want to be the person who's having to replace chips with a CNC machine? Yeah, because the CNC machine is super cool, and you press the button and it, finds the chip and it drills it off. It's like so much easier than having to sit here like in some of my videos and literally pick underfill with a pin. Who wants to do that? I don't want to pick underfill with a pin, but the CNC machine allows me to just sort of drill it all out, and therefore it makes some repairs that have even fallen off my repair treadmill that I've talked about, where repair is for a late model device where the device is expensive and you can charge up to a percentage of the device for the repair, and then as the value of the device declines, you kind of have to price down the repair, and then eventually the repair will fall off the treadmill when the value of the device no longer supports the effort of the repair. Well, I'm starting to put some repairs back on the treadmill with the advance of technology. The CNC machine can drill out an iPhone 4S Wi-Fi chip, and I can put another one on, and now it's the equivalent of a 10 or 15 minute job, which is now something that I would consider doing when previously I would have said no. Same thing for iPhone 5U2 IC chip. I've been declining that repair recently because the value of the device does not support it. However, if it is really easy enough to just drill out the chip, then all you have to do is take like a hot air station and put in a new chip that comes pre-balled for a couple of bucks. Put it on there, perfectly reasonable repair to do again. So technology for repair, especially as we kind of really learn more and more. Software tools, ZXW tool. ZXW tool wasn't around, even a year ago. So now we can have the information to make things that used to be difficult now are easy. Troubleshooting a short on a motherboard, you'd have to work between the schematic and the board view and find each component on the line by yourself. Now you click a button, ZXW tool shows you everything on that line, and so now that again becomes feasible. So my sort of opinion on repair and should you have a repair shop, is that a sustainable business, is absolutely 100% yes. And the key to being successful, in my opinion, is diversity and trying out lots of new ideas. Maybe not every idea will fly. And one of the things that Louis is really critical of is what he calls my cotton candy Disneyland business idea. But I believe in it, which is this we fix everything concept. And this is my new retail shop. The first sign that I put up right over there, general repair shop, and it lists some things that we fix. And then at the bottom of it, it says, we fix everything, and if we can't fix it, you don't pay. So the sort of no fix, no fee solution-based model. And I really believe in that. So he said in the video, he goes on, and in some of his comments around the internet, when we debate this, he brings up this idea that, that the cell phone repair world is a bunch of these bottom feeding noobs, and that, people that are have been in business for 7 years in business, and you're still sending out iPad mini backlight jobs, and I don't see that either. I'd really like and challenge him to produce for me, who are you talking about? Who is the 7-year veteran of repair that is klutzing things up and tearing connectors off the board and things like that? I don't see that. I see a lot of connector and backlight work that comes to me from the franchises, which are the new popping up everywhere franchises that are run by poorly trained, inexperienced people that are going to botch connectors when they're being asked to work at high volume with little training, and being paid a relatively low hourly rate. That's the class of folks that are going to be doing a lot of kind of botched connectors and backlights. So I think that that if you are the 7-year veteran, you are a success already. I see a lot of success out there. I see shops that are, when I go to these conferences, those conferences tend to draw the really successful people, because the really successful people in this repair industry are the ones that are looking for those new ideas, looking for those collaborations, looking to see, what are the new, the ways to make what they do better and give a better result to the customer. They want to learn and have that sort of open-mindedness to look for better ways to improve their service and to improve their overall success rate and their repair strategies. They want to talk to the other people that are really doing well. And when I ask those guys, I didn't have a retail shop until a couple of weeks ago, so I would ask them, what does it look like? I always thought it was, funny when you're in high school, when you're like, what do you want to be when you grow up? The people want to know, how much are you going to make? But don't ask that question. So I went around and asked them, what is your shop making? And I get the idea that a successful shop is making a net of about $10,000 a month. So $10,000 a month for one shop. And a lot of these really successful guys have, they've been doing this for, the iPhone hasn't really been around that long, but they are continuing to see increased bottom line despite the kind of recent trend in the industries. So that tells me that they're able to sort of pull in these other revenue streams in order to sort of continue to grow and continue to be successful despite the reality of parts prices right now. So $10,000 a month, and some of these guys have 4 or 5 locations. That is serious money. There is no, this idea that the running a repair shop is this sort of bottom of the barrel thing to do. I think if done well and done with an eye toward being this concept that I call a boutique solutions provider for repair of anything, that really will fly. At least one really great shop in every town that really does well with repair. One of the things in the video that Louis talked about was, he makes a valid point about, can you really get away with charging more than the Apple Store does for a screen replacement? Isn't that going to piss people off over time? And his point was, if you look at, why is this person coming in here and willing to pay $139 for something that Apple charges $109? Here, the Apple Store is 10 minutes down the road. His point was they're willing to do that because there's an established track record of, the shop doing well and being a good place to go. But over time, maybe that will change as they start going, why didn't I go to the Apple Store? And I think that people are willing to pay more than the manufacturer for a quote knockoff screen because of service. So this idea of being a repair boutique where you are able to really know and connect with your customers and what they really need. If you go to the Apple store, their motivation is to make you buy another device and to upgrade your device. They're going to, kind of try to sell you on that stuff. They really don't do a whole lot of repair, and they don't know much about repair. If you go to a repair shop whose goal is to be around for a long time in the community doing repair. So if you come to me, my motivation is not to get you to make a sale on repair that day. My goal is to sort of, it's kind of like the any other service industry, where my goal is your sort of long-term happiness and sustainability as a customer. In this area, you're my people, my community, and I want for you to have the right repair. So a lot of times people will come in and I will advise them not to repair the device, and I will, kind of give them advice on the relative benefit of fixing this. What is it going to look like? What's likely to happen to it in the future? And to really kind of be able to give them the sort of repair ambassador, kind of experience where I kind of gain their trust, because my motivation is to look out for their best interest, and sometimes that will be repair, and sometimes not, So I think that it will really fly to have this idea of this sort of we fix everything shop. I think that yes, there are a lot of bottom feeders, I guess is the right word, in this industry. And that's just sort of a feature of the fact that it has a low barrier to entry. But that doesn't mean that just because it has a low barrier to entry and there's a lot of people that are kind of turning screwdrivers to make a few bucks and maybe are swayed towards doing some unsavory things that are really not best for your overall, long-term sustainability as a business, that doesn't mean that the industry itself isn't a fantastic place to be for smart, motivated people that want to make money and that just have a love of fixing broken things. So I think that, we can, the reality is there is no training for this. We're making this up as we go along, which is part of what makes it really fun. And so I believe in sharing best practices and being open to new ways of doing things, going out to your conferences and plugging into the webinars. iFixit puts out a ton of great resources for this, and really sort of paying attention and helping each other do better. Because at the bottom line, if you do a better job with your customers, that's good for me. So I had a guy who this week is complaining about a backlight job, because he got his phone fixed somewhere in Kentucky by a shop that put in some cheap screen, blew the backlight. They said it wasn't their problem, and he ends up sending it to me. That's not good. That shop needs to do better, because now that guy is pissed off at repair in general. So the better we can all do to sort of raise the bar for repair, then the better for all of us, And that's part of what my channel is about, which is trying to get, like I've got here, somebody sending me an iPod 5th generation for a charge port. That is a repair that should be done in-house. The mail-in repairs are great, for problems that maybe are a little bit more thoughtful or require some very specific experience and equipment, but something like a charge port, you guys should be doing that, and that's part of the practical board repair course that I absolutely believe in, to sort of, try to get more of this happening locally so that we can all do better by being more open to all sorts of things to fix. I would be open really, to fixing anything that comes in the door, because it's fun. It's this, when Lewis is talking about wanting to kind of stop doing the same thing all the time, then be open to fixing anything. So I this week took 2 repairs that just walked in the door of something I had no clue how to fix, but I'm pretty good at repair, pretty good at figuring out, pretty good at learning from the internet. And I had a better chance of being able to fix their thing than they did. And I was able to fix them both, and it felt great, because you still kind of have that underlying motivation of, wanting to figure out how to fix something that's broken, and when it works, then it's fantastic. So I believe in this fix everything concept. I believe that people that have been doing repair for a while and doing it well, you have a general sense of how to approach a device. I believe in learning on customer devices because, as a professional, you develop a sense of how hard you can push or pull on something, whether something's going to have a screw in there that you've missed. You'll develop that sense so that you are far better able to approach repair of a device you've never seen than they are, and to sort of learn and build your experience base. That's the way that it has to be. So here's the repair so I'm sitting here watching this video from Lewis for an hour and 10 minutes, and I hope that this video ends up shorter than that. And I was just opening packages, and here comes one from a guy who has sent me this thing, which I don't even know what that is, and so I looked it up, and this is a piece of a drone, which is cool. I think, drones are an amazing thing to repair. This guy, I think I did fix one of these before, but, this guy, I remember now, the conversation that led him to send this to me. And even then, he didn't use the word drone. He said, "Are you familiar with the Yanni gimbal board?" And I'm like, no, no clue, but I see a lot of boards. And so he's like, "Oh, okay, well," so I'm like, "Show me a picture." So he shows me the board, and it looks like this. So it's a little circuit board, and okay, it's got some kind of a connector, it's got some kind of a chip, it's a coil, here's another chip. Pretty simple. A lot of capacitors on here, a lot of connectors. And this thing, I looked it up, this thing the device is worth over $1,000. That's incredible. So what does it take to fix? Well, gee, I don't know. I've never fixed one before, but you can kind of develop this sort of general repair sense, this we fix everything concept, and you can look at a board on a $1,000 device that flies through the air and knocks into things and hits trees and gets, picked up by a gust of wind and knocks into the side of the house. This is a great, new thing, a great new direction, to sort of always being open to fix anything. So let's see what it would take to fix this thing. It looks like that somebody's been trying to fix it, because this looks like kind of a, this joint here is, probably not that great. This looks like, a ground wire. It says ground there. And then it looks like at one time there was another connection that was here for this wire, and it looks like the pad is gone. And you can just kind of follow the trace and guess that this little piece that's sort of ripped up here in the board is probably where that thing goes. So what does it take to fix this $1,000 now completely non-functional device? Well, it's pretty straightforward. You don't have to, have a ton of experience with this stuff to figure it out. We're gonna just kind of expose this line here, make sure that it's not broken. Yeah, it's just kind of hanging out right there. We'll put some solder on that. put a little bit of flux and tin that right up. And let's try to help out this other joint. Let's take a look at what it looks like off the board here. See if it's a through hole. Nope. Let's try to straighten this out a little bit. A lot of these, you know, kind of any of these sort of simple, straightforward, little tiny circuit boards, you can always kind of edit them a little bit, make the joints a little bit better. All right, let's cut that so that it will fit on there nicely. Here's a little piece that I want to fix. Whoops. So Lewis makes he's made this point a few times about this sort of landscaper concept, you know, which now he's edited to just being cutting the grass, because everybody can kind of say, you know, landscaping itself is pretty brutal. Come on. That is some hot, sweaty, difficult literally back-breaking work. I wouldn't want to have to be a landscaper for anything. Yeah, so he makes the point that a guy comes and cuts his dad's grass, gets paid $40. And isn't it horrible, the idea that replacing a U2 chip, you're going to make, you know, equivalent or less than the guy that cuts the grass. And that, I think, is pretty silly, because the guy that cuts the grass has to haul lawnmowers to your house. Who wants to do that? Where are you going to store the lawnmower? You got to put gas in the lawnmower. And then ultimately, you're going to have to do lawnmower repair, in order to, you know, lawnmowers are going to fail. Whereas, you know, my soldering station is not getting so much use and abuse. It's not actually having to go through and cut down, you know, weeds and chew up Barbie dolls every day. But a lawnmower is. So that's, you know, you got to maintain that. It's hot. You know, I actually gave up mowing the lawn when I was 9 months pregnant with my twins. So this was the original little piece here. I might put that back with some epoxy and just kind of repair that pretty natively. I think I will do that. Let's flip it over. Let's see how this was meant to go. Yeah, there you go. It's supposed to be like that. I will attach this wire back to that pad that it was originally on, and then I will put some epoxy to seal that down after I clean off the flux. And that'll be a repair. And I will, you know, warranty this and fix it again if it needs to be fixed. There, fixed. All right, that's fixed right now. And I think because it gets some mechanical force, I will clean it off. And I think maybe I'll put this whole thing through the ultrasonic. Yeah, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna put the whole thing through ultrasonic. So in that period of time, I got to fix something that I've never seen before. I've repaired a $1,000 device. The guy's going to be super happy. When it gets out of ultrasonic, it's going to be, cleaner than it was. I'm going to put a little dab of epoxy both under that pad and then over the joint so that it will have some additional strength, so it'll be better than it was originally. And then I'm going to send it back to him, and I'm going to collect $69.99 because it was a repair that I hadn't seen before. So I offer no fix, no fee solution. So if it had something wrong with it where I couldn't fix it and I put time into trying it, then I wouldn't charge him anything. And I think that model works really well. And I think that a $70 repair that was, super straightforward like that, how is this not a fantastic business model? Is this going to dry up? No, because, drones weren't around at the level, the consumer level that they are now. Even, I don't know, a year or 2 years ago, what's going to be the next thing? Maybe we'll all be doing drone repair, just being open to new things, looking for that sort of, next thing. I think I just keep seeing new ones drop down again and again. The iPhone 6 has been out for over a year, and people are starting to have, hey, everything's fine. I dropped it, and now the touch doesn't work. Well, get in there and replace the touch IC. How long does it take to do that? Less than a half hour, including taking the whole thing out. I mean, the bulk of the work is taking the board out. It's a very well-described problem. Take off the touch IC, put on another one. They come pre-balled. The chip itself is not super expensive. People will be willing to pay, up to 60% of the value of the device without a question. It's fantastic. Where will this be in 5 years? What happens if you can go down and get a phone for $100? Is somebody going to really want to fix it for $100? And I think the answer is yes. Not at the same volume, of course, but I think that there will be people that like to fix things, that are going to support your business, that are going to come in and be willing to pay easily more than what they can get from Apple, because you are giving them a better service. They can trust you. You are going to be the person that can steer them into the right repair for them. It's the exact opposite of being sort of this sort of bottom dweller, concept. So what's going to happen to the industry? I believe in natural selection and Darwinism, and I think that I never use the phrase survival of the strongest. It's not the strongest will survive at all. It's survival of the fittest. And that doesn't mean the person that is able to continue to make a buck doing kind of backroom dealings, iCloud unlocking, IMEI unlocking. I'm not doing any of that stuff. I think that you can be extremely fit for your community, and to fill a niche that is going to continue to be open indefinitely. Repair, just repair. Maybe you won't be fixing cell phones. Maybe you'll be fixing drones, But I think that learning board repair is just a fantastic thing to do. Who wouldn't want to sit here making a video for fun and to fix for $70 a tiny little board that took how many minutes? A couple of minutes, solder something back on. Why is this guy sending this to me? Because he couldn't find somebody down the street who could do this. That's insane. This guy shouldn't be sending this to me. He should be going to the We Fix Everything boutique repair shop that he trusts in his community, and they should be able to do that as he stands there, and he should be able to walk right back out the door. I believe that. I believe that repair is sustainable. I believe that it's not going anywhere. I think that we're really at the beginning. You know, that there are just so many devices, just so many more now than there ever have been in the past. You know, I walk around this community and people see that I've opened up a shop. I'll walk into the school today and people are like, "You're gonna make $1 million, man." You know, they're like, "We need this. You know, we want to fix our things." They see the prices in the window. They know, because I tell them, everybody that walks in, "You know, you can get this screen changed at Apple for $109." And they say, "I know, but you know, I really want to get it done right now. Can you help me?" Sure, you know, and they leave with a huge smile on their face. They're supporting local business. You know, who doesn't want to do that? They feel like that they can trust that, you know, if I told them, like the guy before, the last guy that wrote me a review, you know, he came in here and I'm like, iPhone 4S PowerFlex? No, I'm not doing that. That's like way too much turning screws. I showed him exactly how to do it. I pointed him to ifixit.com. I told him I'd sell him the Flex. I told him he could sit there in the front of the store and do it. I put a microscope in the front of the store. I put a little, you know, like iFixit mat. There's a monitor out there. He can ask questions. I'll yell over and help him, you know. But I'm not going to sit there anymore for a 4S. You know, you'd have to pay me too much for my time for the value of the device. But I get it. Repair feels good. So, you know, what we ended up doing was suggesting that the local Boy Scout troop come in here and we do a repair night with those guys where they can kind of do some community service and fix things like that. You know, so many great ideas. You know, workshops, ways to connect with your community. A little kid came in here yesterday with his mom's broken 4S. And I taught him how to use the multimeter. He was watching me fix iPhone 6 long screw, and I showed him how to use continuity testing. And he was in this sort of maker fair kind of thing, and he'd done this little breadboard project, and we talked about how to troubleshoot that. And you know, this kid just so lit up with this stuff. And his mom was coming to donate a iPhone 4S, and she was, you know, she's a friend, and I know her, and so. You know, we were talking about what might be wrong with it, and she's like, "It just doesn't turn on. I left it on the charger all night," you know. And so you know, the kid was like, "Mom, I think I know how to fix it," and he, you know, he thought, you know, that he could just sort of charge it. So I showed him how the USB amp meter would work to see that it's in fact not charging. I showed him under the microscope the port, and he could figure out that, yeah, that's really corroded. And I overlaid a port for him, and we plugged it in and showed that it did charge. So then he knew, I know how to fix it. And then he, like, just like a little business mind was like, "Mom, if I can fix this, you know, can I sell it and keep the money?" You know, and he was super excited, and I thought that was a great idea. So we arranged a play date for my son and this kid and their friends to come sit in the front of the shop, and I'm not going to do it. I'm going to tell them how to do it, and those guys are going to fix that phone, and it's just going to be amazing. And I love that. You know, I just love so much about repair. It's my passion. It's my motivation. And I think that if you are motivated by repair, you know, screw technology, but if you like to repair, if you like to make something work again, take something broken and fix it, then there is a lot of upside in repair. I sat here in the time that it took me to watch Lewis's video and make this video. I have billed $300. You know, this is me coming into the shop after, you know, coaching a kid's team tonight, making dinner for the family. I'm kind of, you know, stopping in here. You know, I've been here for the 1 hour of Lewis's video plus this. You know, it's pretty good. It really is. It really is, and it feels fantastic. So I'm very, very pro repair and pro the industry. And we just fixed a drone.